In a trance, Xiao Xian, who was lying on the bed, heard a knock on the door, followed by a middle-aged woman who asked nervously, "Duaner, what's the matter? What happened?" "Son. Mother, it's okay, I accidentally kicked the stool down." The woman was anxious. "Ah? Are you not hurt?" "No, don't worry. You're tired today, so go and rest." "That's it, then you also rest." There was no sound outside the door, but Xiao Xian said in her heart, "Fuck, why is there a man in this room?" She opened her eyes abruptly. Facing a pair of cold and clear eyes looking down, she was so frightened that she didn't catch her breath. She covered her mouth and coughed. His eyes swept away quickly. The room was full of red, and there was also the word double happiness. "This is the bridal chamber candle night." You Xiao Xian sat up in a hurry, hugged the quilt and shrank to the corner of the bed. Her eyes widened, and stared at the man. "You, don't come here." The man sneered slightly, gritted his teeth and scolded, "You lunatic! It's unreasonable. If you don't want to marry, you don't have to. If it wasn't for me to find out our family married a daughter-in-law, but the bride committed suicide on the wedding night, etc., you let me, how will I behave in the future? How will my parents and brothers meet people?" Xiao Xian was stunned, and only then did she see the white velvet hanging on the beam. In the festive red in the room, she looked a little intimidating. Beneath Bai Ling is the fallen stool. I think it was because this cheap Xiang Gong made a noise when he rescued her, and this caused his mother to come to ask. Boom! Agitated in her mind, Xiao Xian felt dizzy, her face turned pale, and the memory of the original owner flooded her brain like a flood. The identity of the original owner is not low compared to this farm family, but she is the daughter of the county magistrate's family, although she is a concubine. In fact, this prostitute was already engaged, and it was a baby kiss set by her deceased mother for her. Her prospective fiancé was also in good spirits. She even passed the entrance exam and became a county magistrate after her expatriate experience. By coincidence, she was in a neighboring county. Ordinarily, this is just right, and the two married happily. But the mother-in-law Dong hates Xiao Xian's biological mother, so how could she allow Xiao Xian to marry an outstanding man with a promising future, who had already been selected as a magistrate at the age of 18? So a while ago, she planned to coax Xiao Xian to go out to incense, and she was coaxed to the edge of the water and pushed her down. Originally thought that the gods were unaware, but Xiao Xian was rescued by the bridegroom officer in front of her, Xiao Yunyan from Xiaoding village. This has a skin-to-skin relationship, of course, can only be married with a full reputation. The mother-in-law was so happy that her heart was floating. This is good. Not only does she not have to bear a life, but she can also let Xiao Xian resign and marry into a farm family and suffer for a lifetime, and she will never turn around. So, the mother-in-law told her husband, and resolutely resigned to Xiao Xian's marriage, but no, she hurriedly married her to the Xiao family. Xiao Xian was in a state of grief and indignation, and she was in a daze. When she was in the boudoir, she was tightly guarded and couldn't do anything. At that time, she still had a glimmer of hope in her heart. However, when she got married today, she quietly lifted the veil in the new house and saw the shabbiness of the house, like falling into an ice cellar. Unexpectedly, he was rescued by Xiao Yunyan in time. It is not appropriate to say that the original owner is still dead, and it is Xiao Xian who has passed through. Looking at Xiao Yunyan, who had a straight waist and sat on the stool in front of the bed with his hands on his knees, Xiao Xian couldn't help but feel a little sympathetic. This, to be fair, whoever married a daughter-in-law and encountered this kind of thing would have suffered for 8 lifetimes. It really took people's lives. Not only did it become a joke, but the backbone of the whole family was also stabbed. Normal people will be shivering and cold, okay? But, what does this have to do with her? Xiao Xian wailed in her heart, what kind of mess she took over. Xiao Yunyan said coldly with a sullen face, since you are so unwilling to marry, I will send you back tomorrow morning. Don't worry, I will make it clear to the county magistrate that my Shao family is not worthy of you, and I will book it with you. It will be written so that you will not be burdened with infamy. The two were hired by 3 media and 6 recruits, and they were relatives who worshipped Tiandiken. Putting it aside in modern times, that is, they have already gone to the Civil Affairs Bureau to stamp the marriage certificate and get the little red book. Even if it's only been one night, and even if nothing happens, Qiao Xian is going to leave tomorrow, so she can only choose between divorce or divorce. Qiao Xian was startled and shook her head hastily. No, no. 2M not leaving. Can't go. The next day after getting married, she was divorced by her husband's family. Even if this initial were written as a flower, it would not change the fact that she was returned by her husband's family. Maybe her indifferent and selfish father would refuse to accept the return, saying that the Qiao family did not have a reconciled woman. She had already left the cabinet, her husband's family died or her husband's ghost left her husband's family to be the master. 99% of the things her father and mother-in-law can do. Then, what did she become by then? Taking 10,000 steps back, her scumbag father and mother reluctantly left her. Will she have a good life? Will there be a second spring? It's not a question of whether you have a good life, it's a question of how many days you can live. On the contrary, it is much better to stay in the Shao family. She has the status of a county magistrate's daughter. This status is not even in her parents' family, but in her husband's family. She is destined to be her umbrella. As long as she uses it properly, her life will not be bad. Moreover, her husband, wide shoulders, narrow waist, good temperament, high nose bridge, clear outline of handsome face, a pair of eyes as bright as stars, it is very seductive to look at. She does not lose of. Her husband is a student of the Minghua Academy in the county. She has already passed the exam at a young age. Maybe she will be able to become a Juren or Jinchi in the future. She really does not lose. Besides, let's talk about the future. Right now, it's obviously more beneficial to stay at the husband's house, but of course I can't leave. Qiao Xian made a quick decision, pinched her thigh hard, thinking that it would be too miserable for her to cross over. Her nose was sore, and tears welled up all at once. She glanced at Xiao Yunyan with tears in her eyes, and choked with tears. I was confused for a while, so I did something stupid. Now I understand it. Don't worry, I will never do such a thing again. Hat. Xiao Yunyan sneered, his eyes seemed to be quenched with ice. Second Miss is a precious and precious daughter, our Xiao family is just a poor family in the countryside, so it is not worthy of Second Miss, and it is no wonder that Second Miss will be confused for a while. I can't think of it. The Second Miss really doesn't have to feel wronged. I will definitely take care of everything in front of Mr. Qiao. After 2 or 3 years, the Second Miss will be transferred to live here with Mr. Qiao, and no one will know about it. By then, Second Miss will naturally find a good husband again. Wouldn't it be the best of both worlds? Xiao Yunyan was not very happy with this marriage, but what can he do? Who told him to jump down to save someone without thinking about it when he saw someone falling into the water? Who knew it would be? He originally thought that even if the second lady of the Qiao family was squeamish, he would recognize it. Will treat her well. But who would have thought that on a day like marriage, she actually disliked her own family and would rather commit suicide? How can Xiao Yunyan calm down easily? Qiao Xian secretly complained in her heart, the original owner really made her miserable. Although, reconciliation is impossible, absolutely impossible. No. Qiao Xian simply played a bit of a rogue. Anyway, I'm not going anyway. I was wrong before, I apologize to you. If it still doesn't work, then you say how am I? Haha. Xiao Yunyan still sneered. Qiao Xian said bitterly, we get married today, and we will divorce tomorrow. Isn't it true that the two families will become a joke? You don't think about yourself, but also for your own family. Xiao Yunyun was stunned by her shamelessness, and said sarcastically, "Do I have to thank you for thinking about my family so much? That's not necessary. I mean, we have to think of a best of both worlds to deal with this matter. Obviously, Heli is not a good way. Does Xiao Yunyun not know?" Although he was reluctant in his heart for this marriage, but those who knew each other in and out of the village, relatives and friends, as long as they knew about it, who wouldn't envy him? Who doesn't say that this is the smoke from his Xiao family's ancestral grave? Only then did he, a poor boy from a peasant family, become the quick son-in-law of the county magistrate. The bride just walked through the door and left the next day. He didn't even dare to imagine how others would laugh at her. After all, it's all his fault. Qiao Xian looked at him secretly, and saw that he didn't look very good looking, but obviously Heli's attitude was not so firm. She felt a little relieved, took the next step, and said softly, "Do you think this is okay? You leave me first. After 2 or 3 years, when the time is right, we will reconcile." Xiao Yunyun. Xiao Yunyun was a little confused, raised his eyebrows and said solemnly, "Do you really think so? It won't do you any good in 2 or 3 years. Qiao Xian disagreed and said casually, "I'll be 17 or 18 in 2 or 3 years, so what are you afraid of?" Xiao Yunyun. Really confident? Xiao Yunyun was speechless. Okay, since she said so herself, he has nothing to say. If you really want to stay at my house, you must do what a daughter-in-law of the Xiao family should do and abide by your duty as a daughter-in-law. Don't be rude to my father, my mother, my brothers, sisters, and sisters. Also, our family is poor, and there are no servants to serve you. You have to do everything yourself. What you eat is just plain food and food. You need to think about it." Qiao Xian said without hesitation, "Don't worry, I understand all this." Xiao Yunyun's heart, haha, she all understands? I'm afraid she's not joking. No matter how he looked at her, she didn't seem to understand. However, there is no way to do this for the time being, so we can only do it first. In the future. Xiao Yunyun is a little upset, so don't think about it for now, and be patient for the next 2 years, before sending this giant Buddha out of the Xiao family smoothly. In the past 2 years, as long as she manages to be safe and doesn't cause trouble, he will be satisfied, really. Silent for a night. The next morning, Qiao Xian was shaken by Xiao Yunyun. She opened her eyes ignorantly, and Xiao Yunyun was already neatly dressed and standing in front of the bed. Seeing her awake, he said, "It's time to get up." "Hey!" Qiao Xian said, blinked her eyes, yawned and nodded her head, "Well, just get up. No daughter-in-law can sleep in, she understands." In fact, when the original owner was still at her parents' house, she was a poor little girl who got up earlier than the chicken. She is the only one who is struggling. After all, although she was a social animal in her previous life, she never woke up so early. She is the new daughter-in-law, and today she is going to change her mind about serving tea to the elders. After washing up, Qiao Xian officially met with the Xiao family. There are 3 rooms in the Xiao family, and Xiao Yunyun is in the long room. Xiao Yunyun's grandparents have long since passed away, so the 3 brothers of Xiao's father have long separated. Xiao Yunyun's father, Xiao Dekan, and mother, Mrs. Fang. The eldest brother, Xiao Yunlian, is also the eldest of the 3 rooms. The eldest sister-in-law, Mrs. Su, has a pair of children. The nephew Xiao Junyan is 6 years old, and the niece Xiao Qing is only 3 years old. The names of the nephews and nieces were all given by Xiao Yunyun. The eldest brother and sister-in-law were very happy and thought they sounded better than the names of other children in the village. Moreover, the name given by the scholar is also auspicious, which is a good sign. Maybe it will add a little more luck. The second brother, Xiao Yungong, is ranked 3rd and has not married yet. Ahem, the reason why Xiao Yunyun, who ranked 5th, was robbed first, was mainly because of the diving rescue incident, which could not be delayed. The fourth brother, Xiao Yunhua, seventh in the ranking, and the younger sister, Xiao Daotao, are twins who are just 13 years old this year. As for the second room, the second uncle Xiao Dalu and the second aunt Niu. The second wife, 2 sons and 1 daughter, Xiao Yunchen, ranked second, and Xiao Yunqiao, ranked fourth. Xiao Yunchen married his wife Zhang, and also had a pair of children, Xiao Wan and Xiao Xianwen. Xiao Yunqiao is not married yet. Getting ready to meet people. My daughter Xiao Miling is 15 this year. The third house is the third uncle Xiao Dashi and the third aunt Ma. The eldest daughter Xiao Miazi is married, and the youngest daughter Xiao Ziazai is 3 months younger than Xiao Daotao. My son Xiao Yunjiang, rank 6, is 15 this year. He has not married yet and is studying in the county town. At this moment, Qiao Xian only saw the people from the long room. The second room and the third room would come over to have a reunion dinner together in the evening, and then they would all see each other. Fortunately, there were not too many people, so Qiao Xian remembered everything. The Xiao family were curious and nervous about this new daughter-in-law, who was born in Jingui, and they were a little ashamed. When Qiao Xian bowed to them in a proper manner, and changed her words to father and mother. With a smile, everyone was relieved. Fine. Fine. The new daughter-in-law is kind. Xiao Yunyun, who knew about Qiao Xian's criminal record, was the most relieved this woman didn't make a fool of yourself, and she even acted much better than he thought. After thinking about it, she really figured it out. There are not so many cumbersome rules in the farmhouse, so after the tea is changed, and the family members meet one by one, it is enough. The mother-in-law Fang Shi smiled and said some auspicious, complimenting and encouraging words, and soon the crowd dispersed. What to do? Qiao Xian thought about it for a while, and then resolutely followed up with her mother-in-law Fang. In this era, it is very important to gain the favor of my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law's support is the only way to truly gain a firm foothold in this family. Otherwise, you will inevitably face endless troubles and troubles. When the tea was being served just now, the Xiao family was watching her secretly. Isn't she the same? Of course, the mother-in-law is the most important person who needs to be observed. According to Qiao Xian's acquaintance's eyes, her mother-in-law is generally a good person. This is just right, the space for her to play has suddenly become larger. Mother. Qiao Xian caught up with Mrs. Fang in a few steps, with a smile all over her face. She was well behaved and decent. What do I need to do? Please ask my mother to teach me. I don't know anything, and I will worry about it in the future. Ouch! Fang Shi suddenly smiled, looked at Qiao Xian kindly and said, No, you, just take good care of your husband in the future, and let him concentrate on his studies. This family's affairs, I don't need you. After all, this is the daughter of the county magistrate. It's normal for someone who doesn't know how to work. Besides, there are people doing the housework, so she doesn't need her. She is so sensible, and she won't be chaotic at home. Fang is so happy, where would she be allowed to work? Qiao Xian was a little surprised and laughed in her heart. How many cards have been drawn in this card? It's not bad. She insisted on a few words, and she had an excellent attitude of being diligent and willing to learn, which made Mrs. Fang happier and decided to let her rest. Qiao Xian pushed again and again but couldn't, and then gave up. Qiao Xian wandered around the yard slowly. She wanted to make sure of one thing. A loquat tree was planted on the edge of the yard. The loquats on the loquat tree are turning from green to yellow, and they are hanging on the branches in a string. After 10 days, they will mature and become yellow and attractive. She stepped forward, stretched out her hand and gently placed it on the trunk of the loquat tree with a diameter of more than 30 centimeters, secretly concentrating on it, and then the whole loquat tree became more green at a speed visible to the naked eye. Stretch, the fruits on the tree turn yellow one after another in an instant. Qiao Xian didn't expect the effect to be so good, so she quickly withdrew her hand. The abnormal growth and changes on the loquat tree also stopped instantly. She looked down at her hand and was elated. Last night, she had a strange feeling in a daze. This morning, when she encountered water when she was washing, the feeling of swoosh seemed to come naturally, and some strange knowledge suddenly flooded into her mind. At this moment, she was really sure that she really possessed the wood type ability. Wood grows water, so when I encountered water before, this ability would feel particularly clear. As if she had obtained a novel toy, Qiao Xian wanted to try it again. It happened that there was a thin mint next to her, so she squatted down, stretched out her hand, and lightly touched a mint. Just touching it, the mint under her hands did not change. Then, when she concentrated her mind, she silently controlled a stream of spiritual power that was slowly poured into the mint like a trickle, with the mint under her hand as the center. The mint starts growing right away. She withdrew her hand, this time it was completely certain. She closed her eyes gently and silently felt the supernatural power. Well, not only can it induce plants, because the roots of plants are intertwined and connected under the ground, she can also sense all movements within a certain range by touching the plants. For example, at this moment, her hand lightly touched a mint, she knew all the plants and trees in the whole yard and where there was an ant in the corner, as if it was right under her nose. If this is looking for wild goods or birds and beasts in the mountains and forests, it is not easy to catch them. And, the range of this perception can be expanded as the power becomes more powerful. Qiao Xian was elated. Not only that, but this power also comes with a space, which is deserted right now, and she can't enter it. But she is clear that in the future, certain conditions should be able to enter and be used. As for what conditions, she is not completely clear, but it must be related to this ability. She can only perceive now that the space seems to be connected to an extremely high-end system, through which all knowledge and information related to plants can be acquired. Qiao Xian is in high spirits, and she will not be lonely in the future. This alone is enough for her to explore slowly. At about 9 o'clock, the family was ready to eat breakfast. After the tea was served, the father-in-law, the eldest brother, the second brother, and Xiao Yunyun's father and son all went to the fields near the village to do some work, and only came back just now. It is spring now, and the farmers are very busy during the busy farming season. The weather is cool in the morning, which is a good time to work. As long as people who are not lazy, they will go out early in the morning to do some work first. To Qiao Xian's surprise, Xiao Yunyun also went down. Are you so rude as a scholar? She had a good feeling in her heart, and felt that this person was really good. After breakfast, everyone soon discovered that the loquats in the yard were ripe. The mint that was planted just a few days ago has grown a lot without making a sound. Everyone was amazed and had a lively discussion. In the end, I couldn't discuss the reason, so I reluctantly agreed that this place had sufficient energy and better water and soil, so the loquats are also ripening early, and the mint is also lush. Qiao Xian hooked her lips when she heard this, feeling a little proud. This is all her masterpiece. The seventh brother Xiao Yunhua, who is called Little Seven by the family, is the most active and flexible. Whenever he has free time, he likes to drill into the mountains, forests, and valleys. Seeing this Huang Qinchin's loquats at this moment, how could he hold back? He climbed up the tree in a few moments, picked a big basket and came down for everyone to eat. Hey, this loquat seems to be sweeter than in previous years. The pulp is also more tender. The third youngest, Xiao Yungang, praised it, grabbing a big one in his arms. Mr. Fang glared at him. It's all bullshit, do you remember what it was like last year? Xiao Daotao pursed her lips and smiled, and said, Mother, others may not remember it, but the third brother must remember the food here. He must be right. Xiao Yungang is a foodie. He is very persistent. He was chased by wild bees for delicious bee pupae. Hearing what Xiao Daotao said, everyone couldn't help but laugh. After eating loquats, everyone goes to work when they should. Mrs. Fang stopped Xiao Yunyun, glared at him and said, "Where are you going? It's enough for your father and your eldest brother and third brother to do the work in the field. You, take good care of your daughter-in-law." "New daughter-in-law? I just entered the door, don't leave people alone." As Mrs. Fang spoke, she said kindly to Jiao Xian, "Miss Jiao, you have an excellent temperament, but it's just that the man is really careless. If you suffer any grievances, you must say it. Mother will make the decision for you." Jiao Xian's eyes widened and she smiled. Mother, Xianggong and Xianggong are not only very good-natured, but also very attentive. "Mother, don't worry, I won't suffer any grievances. It is my blessing to have such a good mother-in-law and Xianggong. I have never eaten pork and I have seen pigs run away. My mother-in-law can say that her son is not, but she must not be a daughter-in-law." Jiao Xian felt that she was too witty. Sure enough, Mrs. Fang called her a rainbow fart, so she was fascinated with laughter, and giggled, "You child, you are so sensible. Being able to marry you is the blessing of our Xiao family and the blessing of the cloud. Ha ha ha. Mother-in-law, you praise me like this, I really feel ashamed." "Hey, no, you're fine. Well, I will definitely learn from my mother-in-law and be a good daughter-in-law of the Xiao family." "Good, good. Ha ha ha." Xiao Yunyun. Xiao Yunyun looked stupid when he saw that their mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were so affectionate. "Who I am? Where am I? What did I hear? Who can tell him what is going on?" His mother wasn't particularly satisfied with the sister-in-law, and she often complained that the sister-in-law was silent and thoughtful in her heart, and she was selfish. The girl from the neighboring village whom the third brother had a crush on was even more disgusting, saying that his son was naive, and the days of marrying a more naive daughter-in-law would not be over, not to mention that the girl had no father and mother, but had a couple. Greedy and difficult brother and sister. But why did you come to him? The style of painting turned out to be like this." Xiao Yunyun, who was stunned and confused in his mind, was pushed back by his own mother, and he was a little stupid. "Hey! Ah what?" Mr. Fang glared at him, seeming to dislike him for being too ignorant, and winked at him, "What are you still doing? Take good care of your daughter-in-law." Xiao Yun moved his lips. What can he say? "Yes, mother." He could only choose to agree. Fang Shi smiled and comforted Jiao Xian again, and then left with satisfaction. She has seen countless people in her life, and she can't see it wrong. The new daughter-in-law has clean eyes, a bright temperament, but her height is not at all arrogant. How do you complain how much she hurts her? Her son's temperament is a little dull. It's just right to have such a daughter-in-law. Isn't this a blessing from God? Looking at Jiao Xian, Xiao Yunyun's eyes were complicated, and his mood was even more complicated. "You are quite capable. You made my mother so happy." Jiao Xian smiled modestly, "Thank you for the compliment." Xiao Yunyun choked. "Did I praise you, thank you?" Jiao Xian saw that he was so aggrieved and speechless, she laughed so hard that her stomach hurt, she couldn't help teasing him, "Cough, that, mother asked you to accompany me, how are you going to accompany me?" Xiao Yunyun is actually quite well-mannered and doesn't get angry with people easily. But I don't know why, as soon as the woman opened her mouth, he was so angry. However, she blinked, looking like she was waiting for his answer. Xiao Yun said with a bit of stubbornness, "As you wish." Jiao Xian tilted her head and thought, "Why don't you teach me to write? I'm not very good at holding a pen, so you need to correct me bit by bit." The implication is the kind of teaching writing who stands behind her and holds her hand with red sleeves, full of ambiguity. As soon as Jiao Xian said that, Xiao Yunyun subconsciously imagined such a picture, and his eyes widened in surprise. You want a face?" Jiao Xian covered her mouth and giggled, and the man in front of her laughed so much that her brows were twisted and almost turned into anger. She then waved her hand and smiled, "I'm teasing you, don't take it seriously. I want to clean up my dowry, no need you accompany you, do it yourself, he he." Xiao Yun. Xiao Yun couldn't help but feel angry and watched the woman walk away. He couldn't help rubbing his hot ears, gritted his teeth and muttered twice, and walked away angrily. He can be sure that the person is still that person, so this is a once-in-a-lifetime thought. This seems to be a little too thorough. Breaking the jar, completely letting go of your personality? Xiao Yun secretly sighed, the face of a woman has changed too quickly in June. Terrible. Qiao Xian had a total of 26 dowries, which she carried into Xiao's house yesterday. I don't know how many people were stunned with envy and jealousy. To know that a country girl is out of the cabinet, it is very respectable to have 6 or 8. There can be 12 or 16, but not 2 or 3 in 100. Everyone said that the Xiao family is smoking from the ancestral grave. The new daughter-in-law has so much dowry, enough for their family to eat for a lifetime. Qiao Xian turned around a bit and sneered again and again. 26 units are just glossy on the surface. Everything is terribly bad. For example, the dowry booklet recorded a pair of treasure vases, but it was actually a pair of extremely cheap porcelain vases. But it was packaged in 2 big boxes, which counted as a dowry. Another example is a number of fabrics for clothes in the 4 seasons. In fact, it is either cheesecloth or GE cloth, not to mention the first-class fashionable brocade, and there is not even a single piece of ordinary satin. That's it, it was packed in several big boxes and divided into 4 dowries to be packed. As for the amount of silver at the bottom of the box, Qiao Xian finally found the pitiful tales of silver. Of course, as the saying goes, a skinny camel is bigger than a horse, and the daughter of a county magistrate is much better than a peasant girl. In the eyes of the real county magistrate's daughter, these things are equivalent to bullying and humiliation, but for Qiao Xian, she feels that she has earned it. Just talking about those 12 taels of silver is a huge sum of money for the farmer. Madame Qiao's humiliation may have been a fatal blow to the original owner, but to her, it was nothing. Compared to being poor and poor, her starting point is not bad. If she wants money, she will earn it herself. In the future, if you slap the face hard and return it, that will be a joy. After tidying up, Qiao Xian generously took out all the cloth and distributed it to her mother-in-law and sister-in-law Su, and dedicated it to tailoring clothes for everyone in the family. These fabrics are nothing in her eyes, but they are very good things in the farmhouse. Mrs. Feng and Mrs. Su were both startled and couldn't believe it. Mrs. Feng was still a little hesitant, and she was hesitant to want it, for fear that others would say that she was coveting her daughter-in-law's dowry. You must know that when the daughter-in-law's dowry was brought into the door yesterday, she heard a lot of sour words, especially the 2 younger brothers and sisters in the 2nd and 3rd rooms. Those words were so sour that they could squeeze out a jar of vinegar. Qiao Xian observed her words, her eyes were clear, and she said with a smile, "This is just a little bit of my daughter-in-law's heart." Mother, if you meet your daughter-in-law, how can your daughter-in-law feel comfortable? We are all a family, and we should be intimate and warm. Don't you think so? Only then did Mrs. Feng accept it with a laugh, and she couldn't help but say, "This dowry is the most important thing in a woman's family, you, take good care of your own things, don't waste it. In the days to come, it's still growing." Qiao Xian's heart warmed, she was really moved, she nodded and smiled, "Mother's teachings, I've written them down." She took out 2 pairs of very bright silk flowers and gave them to her sister-in-law Xiao Dao Tao and her 3-year-old niece Xiao Qing. From her point of view, the workmanship of this silk flower looks a bit rough, but it costs 25 cents a pair. Who in the country would be willing to buy it easily? Mrs. Su was very happy and thanked Xiao Qing. Xiao Dao Tao also liked it very much, blushing shyly and thanking her, she happily stuck it on her head, and won a lot of praise from several women. Xiao Xian hid a little bit of guilt because she sent fabrics and silk flowers, but she is particularly hardworking when it comes to being nice and compliments. In fact, when she sent something, she had a little bit of temptation in mind, to test the temperament of her mother-in-law, sister-in-law and aunt. If she was greedy, then she had a good idea. But I don't want to, it's not like that. Even if the eldest sister-in-law, Mrs. Su, is a little heavy-hearted, it is human nature. Xiao Xian was completely relieved. But she didn't know that Su Shi was feeling a little uneasy at the moment. As soon as the fifth sibling entered the door, she was obviously compared to her in every aspect, and she was feeling resentful and sullen in her heart. Seeing her flattering her mother-in-law, Mrs. Su scolded many times in her heart, shameless. Who would have thought that the fifth brother and sister would be so generous and give her so much fabric, two of which are still very thick, and can be made into cotton clothes by sewing cotton in winter. He also gave Shaoqing such a beautiful silk flower. She felt that she was so inappropriate. The fifth brother and sister are so generous. The fifth brother is now a scholar, and his family has already gained fame. In the future, when he is successful, the family will only gain more honor. He is not that mean and selfish. Treat them well, the future will be much better. When the fifth siblings didn't come, the housework was different and they were all done by themselves, so there was nothing to worry about. After all, she was the daughter of the county magistrate's family. Mr. Su thought about it, went to the river to wash clothes and walked on the road. His steps were much lighter. Who would have guessed that he met Niu on the way, and Su said hello with a smile, second aunt. Hey, Mr. Niu saw yesterday that the big house was lively married to a good daughter-in-law, and when he saw the dowry, he was so jealous that he was scratching his head. Now that I met Mr. Su, Mrs. Niu's eyes lit up. How could he pass up the chance to provoke him? You're doing laundry. Mrs. Niu looked at Mrs. Su and said with a smile, if you want me to tell you, you are the eldest sister-in-law, you should also teach the new brothers and sisters. Why don't you bring your fifth brothers and sisters with you? How about going together? Su Shi was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, the fifth younger brother must have no clothes to wash today. I'll call her again tomorrow. Niu, she doesn't have clothes to wash, so she can't help you? Oh, I asked you to wash such a big pot of clothes by yourself. In the past, it was just fine. Now that there is one more person, you should share the burden, you say. Isn't it? Your mother-in-law didn't say a word? That's too partial. If you want me to tell you, you are too honest. You are the elder sister-in-law, as the saying goes, the elder sister-in-law is like a mother, so Mrs. Chiao doesn't care about her background, she is the daughter-in-law of our Xiao family, and you should respect the elders. Didn't she make it clear that she doesn't have your sister-in-law in her eyes? In the beginning, you didn't show your sister-in-law's money to keep her docile. Wouldn't she be even more aggressive and excessive in the future? Don't you feel wronged? Honest people can't do it, they will be bullied to death. I feel sorry for you, and for your own good, I just remind you Mr. Niu was talking with gusto, but in vain. He suddenly shouted, second brother and sister, what are you talking about? Both Niu and Su were startled, they turned their heads to look, and it wasn't Hu Fang was the one who rushed over angrily. Su Shi was shocked and hurriedly tried to explain, Mother, let's go. Mrs. Fang hummed softly, glanced at Mrs. Su, and said to Mrs. Niu with a cold smile, what did the second brother and sister say to my daughter-in-law? Why don't you say it again in front of me and ask me to listen too? Look at what I'm doing wrong, I actually asked my second sibling to help me teach my daughter-in-law. Su Shi blushed and was at a loss. After being panicked for a moment, Mrs. Niu regained her composure. She felt that her eldest sister-in-law's voice was much louder today, and her footsteps were even bigger. It was obvious that she was shaking after marrying the daughter-in-law of the county magistrate's daughter-in-law. She is more sour. Feeling sour and jealous, Mrs. Niu said with a half-smile, look at how stubbornly arrogant sister-in-law is asking for guilt. If you don't know, what's wrong with me? Sister-in-law has become the in-laws of the county magistrate's family, and she is majestic. Don't take us as concubines. Don't be a here. Mrs. Fang spat at her and scolded, I know you are jealous, but I said such disgusting things yesterday as if I didn't hear it. Yesterday was a good day, my relatives and friends are all here, and I am too lazy to care about you. You are proud of yourself, aren't you? I am so powerful, what's the matter? If you have the ability, you can also be so powerful and let the old lady see it. If you don't have this ability, don't say rude words, it's ugly. Niu's face flushed with anger, you. What are you? Mr. Fang hadn't lost in the quarrel, and he sprayed at Mrs. Niu with his hands on his hips, my daughter-in-law, it's not your turn to teach me. How confused people would not listen to me, a mother-in-law. Listen to you? You can save it. You have the time to take care of your own daughter-in-law. I heard that your daughter-in-law secretly delivered food to her parents' family a few days ago. Oh, Zhang family really has a filial and good daughter. You guys, my family is truly blessed to have such a filial daughter-in-law. Mr. Niu was trembling with anger, his eyes widened, and his face turned green. Her eldest son, Xiao Erlang's daughter-in-law, Zhang Shi, is full of her parents' family. Since she got married, she has devoted herself to stealing her husband's belongings to her parents' home to honor her parents. At first, Mr. Niu, Uncle Xiao, etc. didn't know about it, and they thought that a thief had entered the house and made a big joke. It was only later that I found out that it was all the work of the Zhang family, and I was so angry. But when Mr. Zhang was caught, he wept bitterly and begged for mercy, then turned his head and continued as usual. But she was so proud of her stomach that she gave birth to a daughter and a son to the second room of the Xiao family, and the other son of the second room of the Xiao family, Xiao Shilang, hasn't said kiss yet. With the support of a son and a daughter, it is impossible for Niu Shi and Xiao Ershu to break up with Zhang Shi easily. Besides, after the break, they can't marry Xiao Erlang again? Don't want money? So, Niu started to fight with Zhang. One tries to hide, the other tries to steal. From time to time, there will be a lot of trouble. Mrs. Zhang is also a wonderful person. If she can't steal anything for a long time, she can pull out the radishes and cabbage in the vegetable garden and send them back to her parents' family. Fang Shi deliberately mentioned this, didn't he stab Niu Shi's lungs? Seeing that she was so angry that she couldn't speak, Mrs. Fang snorted arrogantly and glared at Mrs. Su angrily, what are you still doing here? Hey! When Mrs. Su saw her mother-in-law's arrogance, she was so frightened that her legs became weak. Ah! She hurriedly said, yes, mother, I'm going to do the laundry, I'll go first. The Su family fled in embarrassment. Although her mother-in-law never challenged her or scolded her for no reason, for some unknown reason, Mrs. Su was afraid that her mother-in-law would be scared to death. As soon as the mother-in-law made a serious face, she did not dare to let out the air. Only then did Mrs. Niu take a deep breath, and said tremblingly, you, don't be complacent. Who knows what kind of temperament your new daughter-in-law is, I'm afraid that you have invited a bodhisattva back, so you can't beat him, you can't be too high. It's only a joke at that time. If it was before the marriage, Mrs. Fang might still be worried about a thing or two, but now? Of course it's impossible to worry about. She sneered, okay, I'm waiting for you to see the joke. As long as you can laugh. After speaking, ignore Niu again, turn around and leave. Mrs. Niu let out a breath of turbid breath, and said in a hurry, I'm so off, Mrs. Fang. Humph, what are you proud of, as long as the big brother is still protecting our 2 rooms, what is your mouth? You can't listen to the big brother, yes. Big brother is the head of the family. That's right, she was really confused, so she didn't have fun with Mr. Fang. She shouldn't have quarreled with Mrs. Fang. Niu was thinking in her heart that she had to discuss with her own man, and she had to go to her third younger sister, Ma, to discuss it too. Coincidentally, it's time for Shiro to talk about his daughter-in-law, and Myling, the daughter-in-law, is about to talk about her family. The dowry and dowry have not yet arrived. Da Fang made a fortune by marrying the Chiao family, so he had to help him no matter what. I can't write two characters of Shao in this stroke. My eldest brother has always been very generous to the two of them. Niu became complacent again, and while muttering, he went to the third room to find Ma.